Hey everybody, and welcome again to the Rebel Show. I'm so glad you're joining us. I hope you're enjoying these episodes. I've been having a lot of fun researching and learning myself, so it's always good to learn together. So feel free to always leave a comment and like and share with your friends if you like it, and help the show grow. You know, we're here to learn together and to talk about history and try to get back to our roots, to a position where we can actually take our government back to a position to where it's doing what it was designed to do and not trying to rule people's lives. So some of the notes from today's show I took from the book 5,000 Year Leap. It's a great book. It's an easy read. It's short. And it's like straight to the point, full of details, and it's awesome. So believe it or not, America's republic form of government was partially inspired by the early Israelites. So I think thinking back on these founders, this isn't a bunch of guys just sitting around trying to figure out how a government should work. They were looking at a situation where they had been treated wrong, and they wanted to fix it and make it so future people couldn't be in that same position. So, the founders, they studied the ancient Israelites from the Bible, and they were well-read and careful students of the Bible. And I might butcher some of these names, but these are old writers. Polybus, Cicero, Thomas Hooker, Coke, Montesquieu, Blackstone, they were students of the Greek and Roman, Anglo-Saxon, European, and English history. So these people spent a lot of time reading. They didn't have TV to really entertain them, and a lot of them owned businesses. Not all of them, but some of them, and they would read and teach themselves. A lot of them were self-taught through a lot of things they did, And we can see through Scripture the different principles of our government. So let's look at Leviticus 25:10. And ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land, all the inhabitants thereof. And it shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man into his possession, and ye shall return every man into his family. So every 50 years, debts were forgiven, and slaves were returned, and things like that. And some of that scripture is actually on the Liberty Bell. Jeremiah 34:17. Therefore, thus saith the Lord, ye have not hearkened unto me, and proclaiming liberty, every one to his brother, and every one to his neighbor. Behold, I proclaim liberty to you, saith the Lord. Liberty and freedom is from God, and it was God's original design for man to live free, not as a slave. There was slavery. It wasn't his best. There was sickness. It wasn't his best. People lived in, people went through things that it wasn't God's plan or God's best for them. He was the creator of liberty. He was the creator of freedom. He was the creator to let people go live a lifestyle that they want, as long as it's not really harming other people or stuff like that, People organized into smaller manageable sizes, or districts, what we call them today, district representatives. Exodus 18:13-26. This is quite a few scriptures, but it's kind of important to read through these. 13 says, And it came to pass on tomorrow that Moses sat to judge the people. And the people stood by Moses from morning unto evening. So he's working all day into the night. And when Moses' father-in-law saw that he did to the people, he said, What is this thing that thou doest to the people? Why sittest thyself alone, and all people stand by thee from morning to evening? And Moses said unto his father-in-law, Because the people come to me to inquire of God. Now you got to remember, God wanted to be king of his people. God wanted to rule men's hearts, and he didn't want them to have a king. He wanted to be their king, and he wanted to communicate to them one-on-one like we have now. But they wanted law, and they were scared of God or something, and they wanted someone to speak for God to them. 21 goes on, Moreover, thou shalt provide out of all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place them over to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s. So here's where we get the basis for like districts and senators and stuff, because you have rulers of hundreds, 50s, and 10s, and it even gives criteria on what kind of people to vote for. Able people, someone who can actually perform the job, someone who's not sick probably, or they can get to the job and do the job. And they fear God. That's not saying that they're afraid of him. It's saying that they respect and honor him and live by his laws. Men of truth that are going to be honest and say it how it is. That's important, and we're getting away from that. Hating covetousness and greed. So they're not going to be trying to embezzle money or take tax dollars from the people. They're going to do it honestly. And then they can rule over the people, right? So 25 goes on. And Moses chose able men out of all of Israel and made them heads over the people, rulers of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. So issues were solved at the lower level, and harder issues went up to the top. And that's the way it's supposed to work. Verse 26 says, and they judged the people at all seasons, and the hard causes they brought into Moses, but every small matter they judged themselves. Pretty cool, huh? So at the local level, at the state level, and the district level, they judged themselves. If there's a big problem, it went up, and Moses dealt with big problems. All right, so in the Bible, the death penalty for murder was something that was very common. So Numbers 35:31 says, moreover, you shall take no satisfaction for the life of a murderer, which is guilty of death, but he shall be surely put to death. So the death penalty came from Scripture, that's how you dealt with these problems. And then, of course, leaders were elected by the people back in these days, even kings in a sense. 2 Samuel 2:4 said, and the men of Judah came, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. The men of Judah anointed David king. So there was an agreement among the people who they wanted to lead them. Even though God anointed them, they agreed. 1 Chronicles 19:22 says, and did eat and drink before the Lord on that day with great gladness, and they made Solomon the son of David king the second time, and anointed him unto the Lord to be chief governor, and Zadok to be priest. So these were people putting other people in charge and letting other people become leaders. And so laws were approved by the people. Exodus 19:8 says, and all the people answered together and said, all that the Lord hath spoken we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord. So God says, here's my law. Go make sure the people want this. All right? So that's what Moses did. So when God brought the law to Moses, to the people had to consent to it. The people had to agree that this is what they wanted. To make sure it's what they wanted, Moses asked 3 times, hey, are you sure this is what you want? And they're like, oh yeah, we'll follow all the laws God says, no matter what. We'll do it. No problem. And so they got the law. So we have the House, the Senate, and the President. Those are our 3 branches. We should know that. Some people in Congress don't know that. The founders wanted to stop the human tendency to rushing to anarchy, to tyranny. So it took them a lot of years, 180 years, 1606 to 1787, to really come up with the formula. The goal was to keep the power base close to the people, local, by having strong local government. That's the goal here. We're getting away from that. They wanted balanced power. So they have this picture of this eagle. And in the center is where the founders wanted power, right? So you have this bar and a graph. In the center, there's this eagle. And imagine the far left is tyranny and the far right is anarchy. And the center is called the people's law, right? So picture this eagle with 3 heads and 2 wings, all right? So one head looks to the left, one to the center, and one to the right. The left looking is the executive branch, or the administrative executive, which is the president. The center looking is the legislative branch. I think I said legislative last time. I meant executive. So the center looking is legislative, which is the lawmaking. That's Congress. The right looking judicial branch is the guardian of the Constitution. So it interprets the originally designed principles of the founders, Supreme Court and lower courts. So its design is to protect the Constitution, make sure that Congress and the president are functioning based on the Constitution. So where are we here? The left wing is the problem-solving wing, solving the unfulfilled needs of the people. The right wing is conserving the nation's resources and freedoms. Both wings fulfill their duties, and America will fly straighter and higher than any other nation in history. But if the wings drift, we will head towards anarchy or tyranny. The founders considered political extremes to those who pulled the eagle away from the balanced power. They considered that political extremes. The genius of the American system is maintaining the eagle's balance in the center of the spectrum. So we're not going towards tyranny, we're not going towards anarchy, we're going right with the people's law. So today the branches are out of whack. And it's the people's job to bring it back through voting. Congress can impeach judges if they need to. And we need to vote able men and women who follow the characteristics God put in, and we won't have some of this stuff. Other notes here. The founders warned against the welfare states where the government tries to take care of everyone, and confiscatory taxation where they just take your money, they vote and just take and raise taxes at their whim. Deficit spending, which we see a lot of now. Thomas Jefferson said, "It was immoral for one generation to pass the extravagance in the form of debt to the next generation." So passing debt to another generation, he called immoral. And look what we're doing. America's doing that right now. They warned against equal protection of rights. Not allow government to distribute equal distribution of things, such as money, property, and land. So some people are going to have more than others. That's just the way it is. Some people work harder. You don't get equal outcome. If you put in a lot of work, you should get more. If you don't put in a lot of work, you get less. So Jefferson said the people alone can protect us against the evils of misgovernment. And that's what we got to remember. The people are in control if we stand up and vote. There's been a lot of elections lately where very few people are voting, and we're getting people in office that are taking the country the wrong way. In order to keep freedom and keep our finances and keep things going well, we need to get out and vote, and we need to remember these things here that I've taught in this lesson, because our government is based on Scripture and revelation from God. And if we can apply the principles the proper way, we can have a great nation for a lot more years, and our children can grow up in a great place. So hopefully you liked it. Thank you very much.